Design Leader Insights is brought to you by Fuego UX. Fuego UX is a leading UX research, strategy, and design consultancy. Hey, Ari, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Hey, thanks, Alex. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. It's always nice to have another Colorado design leader on the show. To get started, I'd love to learn a little bit about your journey in design.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of an unconventional path. Like I was a police officer and detective for 10 years. And then following that, I went into organizational psychology for a very brief period of time after I had gotten my doctorate, because it was just this natural progression about like, I learned about learning. And so I should now teach others about learning. And I didn't really love it. And then through this really interesting serendipitous turn of events, I ended up as a subject matter expert, a qualitative subject matter expert for a large consumer packaged goods company, leading like market research initiatives across different brands and brand categories and multicultural research, foresight and trends, and all of these interesting things. But I was also leading some new product innovation and technology stuff. And it was there that I got bit by the tech bug. And from there, on a lark, I had applied for a role at Twitter when it was still the blue bird, and Jack Dorsey was still like leading that ship. And I got hired to lead their UX research, build and lead their UX research team for their data business in Boulder, Colorado. And so from there, I then built analytics research and insights teams for companies like Panasonic and for Indeed and a company called GTM Hub, which is now Quantive. And now I lead experience research for Twilio's communications business unit, and I lead research operations there as well.
That's awesome. I think you're the first legit detective we've had on the show. That's quite a journey. You had an interesting take on AI and research, and I think I think there's a lot of different takes nowadays. Like, it's nothing, it's not smart enough, it's not doing it. But you actually think it is very capable, and where it's going in the next few years will be able to do a lot of what researchers do. Is that correct?
I do. So it's interesting because in the beginning, I took a really hard-nosed approach against AI because it's not a human. It's and really, if you think about like AI research, it suffers from the problem of induction, which was popular. David Hume's problem of induction, which was popularized by Nasir Taleb in The Black Swan, where you're taking the past to predict future events. It's the same problem with research. You're like, it's cyclical. Anytime you say something cyclical, you're looking at the past to predict the future. It's really dangerous. So if you think about research in terms of three buckets, like there's boulders, which is like, that's when we talk about directional insights or directional research, it's like the big picture. Then there's like rocks, which are like, okay, we're starting to get a little bit of refinement. We're starting to narrow it down. And then there's the pebbles, which are like the detail and the nuance. AI today can absolutely get you toward the boulders. It might even be able to get you toward some of the rocks. Now, is it going to get you some of the refinement stuff? No. But the question is what are the impacts on research? And the reality is if teams employ tools like that, or if you expect teams to employ tools like that, they're going to hire fewer researchers because they don't need researchers to direct in the right direction. They just need researchers to do refinement. It also up-levels researchers to be doing more of the nuanced, difficult, challenging work ahead. But also the last thing I'll say about this is we cannot expect AI to be doing in 1 year what it does today. It's going to do more. It's going to continue to improve and enhance. So we're thinking about the world in terms of like today, but tomorrow isn't today, it's tomorrow. And when you start thinking about that, you're like, wow, AI really is going to continue to evolve and grow and learn.
No, Ari, I mean, I think that's true. Like these tools are going to exponentially grow essentially and learn and iterate faster than we can on research. What do you think about a trigger word, maybe democratization of research, in the sense that maybe product teams are actually doing this research nowadays? And like
they are.
Right.
They are. And for anybody to like, I think the word democratization is like, it's so loaded now because people are like either so for or against it that we're never going to break.
Polarizing.
It is so polarizing.
Yeah.
And so when I think about that, the reality is this: product managers should be talking to customers, right? Designers should be talking to customers. Like Sales teams, customer success teams should be talking to customers. And so when you think about like what research is, let's define on the definition of research, and that is just systematic investigation, right? It's that simple. Why wouldn't we want everybody systematically evaluating, interrogating the evidence that's coming in, and then sharing that across the business? So like the reality is every team would be better off if they collected and interrogated evidence like a detective, built defensible business cases like a trial attorney, and communicated with the confidence of a primetime news anchor. Every team would be better off doing that. So I think research teams of the future should stop worrying about like who's doing research, and let's stop everybody and start thinking about enabling. How can we help different teams do different things, collect and interrogate evidence in the right way? And then it's up to the research. If a researcher's worth their salt, what they're going to be able to do is say, oh, this evidence is not as strong as this evidence, but I can corroborate it and put the story together that way, rather than being so dismissive of it. The example I give often is, pretend we're at a restaurant. There's a group of detectives sitting in the corner. Everybody else is not a detective. A fight breaks out in the middle. The police come to find out the story. Do they only ask the detectives in the corner? The detectives are obviously the researchers. If we're only asking the researchers what happened, we're missing the story from a bunch of different angles. Now, the police officer will get the detective's story, they'll get everybody else's story, and then they'll corroborate it. But that's really how I think about it.
So who do you think's responsibility it is to come up with like those? You mentioned the rocks, like the big ideas. Like let's say Twitter wants to do a pivot, and we know who makes those ideas now after the change of management. But do you think that's UX research in like terms of business strategy, or do you think that they're supposed to take an idea from the CEO, talking about these big visionary ideas, and then go validate it?
I hear the word validate and I smile, because to me, they should test it. And those ideas should come from everywhere. And so it's really dangerous for us to say, well, the CEO shouldn't do that, because if we did, Steve Jobs' ideas would never do that. And I know that Steve Jobs is an outlier, but I also think that like if research is out into the world, into the savannah, looking at different things, and they come up with ideas, they should be able to build like I said, build a defensible business case as to why we should chase this. The whole company, from the janitor to the CEO, should, if they come up with a groundbreaking idea of something, should be empowered and enabled to build a case grounded in evidence and communicate that case with confidence. How that gets vetted is a totally different story, but I think that the ideas should come from everywhere. Like the reality is this: if you think about that old story of the blind men and the elephant, and one's touching the tusk, and it's like, oh, this is a spear, and the other's touching the side, and it's like, oh, this is a wall. That's kind of how businesses are today, right? You have like customer success is talking to customers. They learn things. Sales talks to customers, or buyers. They learn things. UX is seeing user experience issues. Everybody is seeing different parts of this, but today, nobody is sharing those across. Nobody.
Ari, what advice do you have for those new designers or researchers looking to break into the field today?
I think that the best advice I could give is you have to learn 5 basic research methods to be proficient as a researcher. And those are interviews, desk research, basic surveys, observation, and usability and concept testing. Using Pareto's principle, that's 80% of research is governed by those methods, okay? That's one. There's a second part of the equation, though, that I think that most people entering the field are missing, and that is being able to communicate with confidence, being able to build a business case. And I see it in portfolio reviews. I see it in story. People think that storytelling is just telling people like all the little tasks that you did and making the connecting the dots. And the reality is they're not able to tell a compelling story about what the problem is, what the outcome is, what their proposed solution is, the tactics they took to get there, the evidence that they're using to support and refute their position, and the risks of action and inaction. They don't tell that story. And that's the story that needs to be told. So the advice I would give is don't focus your education solely on methods. Learn to be a strategic communicator as well.
It's so true. And if you struggle with that, I highly recommend Toastmasters International. It'll definitely force you to get comfortable with presenting ideas to an audience and and doing that. Ari, thanks so much for joining today. I'm wondering where can we point people to go find more or learn more about what you're up to?
The best place to stay up to date on everything I'm working on is at influentialresearcher.com. It gets you onto my mailing list where I talk about my cohort-based course and some other things that I'm working on. Plus, you get a weekly newsletter with my thinking. But influentialresearcher.com.
Nice. Okay, cool. Checking that out for sure. Thanks again for joining, Ari.
You bet. Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it.